of the world, but the Puranas are the histories of the universe, not only in one millennium, but in many kalpas. Brahma has knowledge of these histories, of these historical facts, and therefore all the Puranas are history. As originally composed by Brahma, they are part of the Veda and are called the fifth Veda. Itihasa Puranani Panchamam Vedamishwaram Sarvebhya Eva Vaktrebhya Sashvijay Sarvadarshanam. Then he created the fifth Veda, the Puranas and the histories, from all his mouths, since he could see all the past, present, and future. Now on this planet there are many histories. Histories of different towns, histories of family. In our own family we maintain a history. The grandfather did like that, and the great-grandfather did like that. And some families do it. And there are also towns with histories. 500 years ago in this place, this happened and that happened. People remember like that. Then in nations there are histories which are inscribed in the books, which are taught in the schools, very sacred history. That goes back maybe 200, 300, 400 years. Maybe longer. Greeks may have some history, goes back 2,000, 3,000 maybe. So everybody's got his history. Nobody's history goes back very far. Even history of the world, it's all bewildering. Some time ago, things happened and started, and they're not sure how. Actually, even different, very learned persons in the academic community are beginning to get very frustrated, especially the science of paleontology, where they talk about all of the so-called artifacts and bones and all the things which were found under the ground and how they were found and the geological strata they were in and all that. They're realizing that it's total and complete speculation. Even a newspaper like the New York Times published a whole page article about how it's simply speculation and it's not even a science. So gradually they're beginning to wake up to the fact that nobody knows what took place in the past, and that we can go on speculating all we like, and then we'll have to keep changing the speculations. Make it straight. We'll have to keep changing these speculations, and then later on we'll accept it in a different way, and then later on in a different way. And each time you're supposed to accept this as the truth. Even the New York Times said that. Prabhupada has been saying that for years. Now finally others are beginning to catch on. So now history cannot be maintained because history in the mundane sense is maintained by historical records. And it is a fact that frequently there are things happening which destroy all the historical records. Either by war. For instance, in India, so many historical records were kept, long time, which the Muslims destroyed. Practically the whole of the Jyoti Veda, with all of its stellar history of the stars, that was all destroyed in one shot in Delhi, near Delhi, by the Muslims. They were so envious because they have no books. The Muslims had no books, maybe 1, 2 books. And the Hindus had millions of books. So they got terrified. They got terrified at this. What is this? All these Hindus, they have so many books. They must know something. So they burned it down. So we've lost quite a lot because of that. So previous histories may be wiped out by war, by enviousness, by floods. They may be wiped out even by ants and other creatures that eat things. They thought some time back they'd make a Grantha Samadhi in Vrindavan. So they they kept all the books inside a tomb which they covered with brick and mud to make it very nice. But unfortunately they forgot about those little fellows who were hungry. And all those little fellows went in there and ate everything up. So all those nice books original books of the Goswamis and others are probably all eaten up. So this is a problem with history, is that who's going to keep it for long periods of time? So far we've seen history can manage to be maintained for maybe 1,000 years. But even that history which is put down, is it right? Is it correct? Can we trust it? Can we trust the history that somebody says? Just like you ask somebody what took place 1 year ago here, just 1 year ago or 2 years ago, each person will have a different version of history. But that version which best coincides with the version that should be heard to accomplish the future purposes, that version is accepted as actual past history. Why something took place, how it took place in the past, is simply up to the whimsy of those who are deciding how things should be written down in the present. Therefore, in different countries of the world, you'll have completely different versions of the same exact history. Completely different versions. The same exact history. After the Second World War, we have a perfect example of that, how all the histories in Germany and Japan were changed in order to reflect the way in which the leaders wished their people to think, or in which they were forced to want their people to think by other governments. So we find that history is a relative thing. However, the reason it's relative like that is because there's no proper historian in this world today who's actually neutral. There's no one who understands things deeply enough to write down history as it should be. And there's no way to preserve it over periods of time because of the destruction of the elements. Therefore, Purana, Itihasa, is actual history. Itihastra means history. It's the literal translation. Purana means narration of very old things. And sometimes we wonder why some of these things don't seem to exactly relate to that which we've understood or could understand. That's because Lord Brahma, being the creator of the universe and living an enormous length of time, when he recites history, he doesn't just recite history that took place in one day of his time. If I asked you to recite what took place in your life, or just something nice about something, you wouldn't just recite about what happened today, would you? Even if it's 12 noon, and half the day has gone by. So you wouldn't just recite about all the events of the morning only. You would talk about yesterday this, the day before that, the week before this, the year before that. So Lord Brahma is in the second 50 years of his life. And this particular day is not even half over. This day is somewhere around 9:30. Or maybe even earlier. Let's see, around 7:30, 8:30 in the morning. Lord Brahma's day is still beginning. And so he's speaking about, when Lord Brahma gives histories, he gives histories that come from any part of his creation. We may be talking about a history which took place in a different day of Brahma in the Puranas. And he doesn't have to recite it in chronological order. At first we recite the histories that took place in that time and that time. Chronology is something which the Western mind is very attracted to. This happened, then this happened, then this happened, then this happened. It's a way in which less intelligent people can organize their thoughts. Sequentially. First this, end. Now this, end. Now this, end. By time. Very easy way in which simple people without much intelligence can organize their thoughts. But the Veda is not meant for unintelligent persons. It's meant for persons who have random access to any particular part of history. They can immediately access any particular part because of topic. Indexing is already done. The topics are already there. One can immediately pick out Lord Brahma, he recites about this particular history. The Bhagavatam, for instance, is organized according to specific general topics. Just for instance, the 7th canto is about how Prahlad Maharaj is protected by the Lord. The topic of protection is there. And here we have now the 3rd canto. Very much concerned with creation, very much concerned with the form of physical things. So anything that's recited from this will be in that particular subject matter, and it does not have to follow any chronological order. Intelligent people are not concerned with chronology, because chronology means nothing. Maybe when you're reciting a history, you should understand that first Lord Brahma created the Kumaras, then he asked them to make Prajapati. Not that first he asked them to create progeny, and then he created the Kumaras. So some chronology is required within a particular pastime, of course. But outside of that, it is not so required unless the historical account is like that. The topic is Lord Brahma's creation, so it is being told fairly sequentially. But sometimes you can't tell things sequentially. It's like in Krishna book, when it is described all about Krishna's pastimes. But then all of a sudden, sometime you'll see it goes backwards and starts again, but from a different place. History gets all confused if you speak about this happened in this place, and all of a sudden you jump over to that place because that happened at that time chronologically. So you tell about the pastimes that happened here, and then you go back in time and tell again another series of pastimes. Otherwise, everything becomes crazy. So therefore, to demand of the Purana or Itihasa chronological order means less intelligent person. So we do not demand like that. We allow the Vedic literatures to stand on subject matter alone, and they do quite nicely. Subject matter, historical account, and not only that, but Lord Brahma allows it to be according to any part of his universe. So many parts of his universe are there. And not only that, but so many times in the universe are there. Therefore, if somebody says it's highly unlikely that this could have taken place, he's a fool. First of all, if you just consider a different planet, anything can take place on a different planet from our point of view. What do we know what takes place on different planets? If on another planet they can do things in that way, that's fine. And even on this planet so many things could take place, but at a different time. How would we know what took place? It's like people, they speculate like mad that everybody previously was just some uncivilized barbarian. And then they find evidences which completely contradict that. So then they just push them aside. Historians just push aside those evidences because they don't fit within their concept. There are hundreds of thousands of evidences that evolution never took place, for instance. But those evidences are pushed aside because they don't fit within the theory. They even found wonderful little batteries from the Incan civilization. Tiny little things about so big, which had enormous power in them. So they pushed it aside because it didn't make any sense. Just in Kurukshetra, they found so much siliconized sand, which could have only been siliconized by enormously powerful forces. Because of all the Brahmastras there, melted down the sand. But they were busy thinking maybe a comet hit. They found no craters or anything. Everywhere these things hit, there's some crater. So they just push it aside. Just push it aside. It's like they find 50 million year old dinosaur footprints. And in the middle of it, a person's shoe print. Also 50 million years old or older. Then they push it aside. They say, that's ridiculous. Whatever they find that disagrees with what they think, they push it aside. And that which they think and agrees with it, that they keep. Isn't this marvelous science? Really marvelous science. And people worship that science. But Veda is not so stupid as to do foolish things like that. Veda is for the most intelligent, because it actually gives history of all time and all places in the universe. Someone may say, but it's so unbelievable sometimes. Well, that's your problem, not its problem. Your problem is you don't believe. That's another thing. But history is history. We can't change history to please you so that you'll believe it. Because later on there'll be another civilization with another class of men who don't believe those things either. But they'll believe another set of things. So then we have to change Veda again to please their senses. And by the time this filtering process takes place, there's nothing left. At the end, Veda is simply throw ghee on fire. Because that everybody can accept. Because fire likes ghee, it's scientific also. So we don't engage in this filtering process. Oh, that will be accepted, that will not be accepted. Filtering process has already been done for us. On the higher planetary systems, there are many more volumes of Bhagavatam. Some hundreds of thousands of verses are there. Here there are 18,000. Because that's what's required for the human being civilization on Earth planet. So, this civilization takes so and so much Bhagavatam. But that's already been given to us by higher authorities. Now we cannot say, all right, now we'll take this part, not that part. The Mayavadis, they take Bhagavad Gita like that. We'll take this verse, we won't take that verse. We like this chapter, but not that chapter. Maharishi Mahesh Bhogi, he takes only the first 6 chapters. He says everything is in the first 6 chapters. Because after that, there's too much surrendering to Krishna business. So he figures, how can I comment on all these surrender to Krishna verses? Better we just say they don't exist. Sure. And those verses where Krishna directly says that if you think that the unmanifested has come from the manifested, and manifested has come from the unmanifested, you're a fool. They don't comment at all. They just skip it, go on to the next one. Picking and choosing. Philosophy. Picking and choosing verses according to the way one wants. Just see, if you, for instance, take any book. Let's say somebody's making a philosophical statement. You can, by just simply excerpting, make it say anything you want. With the little ... One can say, for instance, it is absolutely not true that this and this. And you just put, it is absolutely ... true that this and this. We've seen people do this, even though it's completely illegal. They may not do it within one word, but they'll take half of a sentence up here and half of a sentence down there, and they'll make it say something completely different. Excerpting, it's called. People are expert rascals. This is the nonsense of history, historical accounts. Veda should not be excerpted. You must accept it as it is. Bhagavad Gita must be accepted as it is. Just like Macmillan Company excerpted Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. They made a summary, not an abridged version, because it was too much to print, they thought. Nobody in America bought 1,000-page books. Only one was Gone with the Wind, and that was a garbage book. So, nobody buys 1,000-page books, they figured, especially about spiritual life. Forget it. 280 pages, that's all right. So we'll make a little book like this. Prabhupada never liked that book. Never wanted it printed. But there was contractual obligations. And of course, Prabhupada very expertly managed to get out of that. But there were so many restrictions. He didn't want ever any of his books to be abridged. He wanted them in full. And finally, when the Bhagavad Gita came to him, we were in Berkeley at that time, said, yes, this is Bhagavad Gita as it should have been. As it is. This is as it is. Full and complete. Therefore, Prabhupada did not like to give this abridged version. But because he thought he would not live to translate the 10th canto, which is exactly what happened, he gave summary study of 10th canto. just so that we could have something about Krishna's pastime. He was always fearing he would pass away before he could give the 10th canto. So he did that like that. Otherwise, he said, no abridging. Always as it is, as it is. History must be given as it is. Veda must be given as it is. Just see, Vyasadeva giving over 200,000 verses of Mahabharata as it is. This is Panchama Veda, the 5th Veda. Itihasa, Purana. Mahabharata is an Itihasa. It's a history. It's also called the 5th Veda, Panchama Veda. All these books are called 5th Veda. They deal with Vedic things in a historical perspective. Even the Upanishads also have histories, but basically philosophical commentaries by this sage who taught that sage who taught this one and like this. So these historical commentaries are very important because we understand how previous people were very much engaged in philosophical talks. Practically speaking, if one reads Veda, he would think that nobody talked about anything else. But there was certainly other talks. Otherwise, how Shukadeva Goswami could speak about this Gramya Katha, Agriheshu Grihamedinam. People are simply interested in materialistic things. Certainly in the court of King Kamsa, they weren't talking about Veda. So, certainly, Maya was there. But why should that be written down in the historical commentaries? What is the value of that? Therefore, only the essence is given. The essence of history, the histories of great persons engaged in great way for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. And that has value. These other histories have no value. But people like to talk about themselves also, especially nationally. Oh, in the past, our great nation did like this, and our forefathers did like that. And they're very glorified in that way. It's nationalism, one of the biggest problems. That everybody thinks of himself in terms of a country. Or a family. In our family we did like this. Or in himself, I did like this in the past. Because I am great. I am wonderful. In this way, everybody uses this as an opportunity for self-glorification. Whether it be in the body, glorify the body in its activities, glorify the mind in its activities, or the intellect, glorifying the nation and its activities. We are too much attached. So much nationalism is there. Bodily consciousness is there. Simply on the basis of temporary things. One lifetime, one could be a German and have incredible nationalism. And the next lifetime, he can be born in Israel and have the same amount of nationalism. Completely opposite. One lifetime he's trying to kill Jews, and the other lifetime he's engaged in glorifying them. And he doesn't even see the contradiction. He wouldn't even see the contradiction, because it's simply whatever body I'm in, that's the best body. Whatever I'm doing, that's the best thing. Whatever nation, that's the best nation. And that's just changing all the time. This is all bodily consciousness of life. So Veda is not engaged like that. It's not meant for any time, place, or circumstance. It's meant for all people at all times, in all places, in all circumstances. And everything there is relevant in one way or another. But sometimes it does not, just like in the Bhagavatam. We don't have very deep descriptions about all these ritualistic ceremonies and sacrificial performances. Because first of all, it's not the method which is supposed to be accepted in the Kali Yuga. And second of all, we couldn't even do it if it was. No proper yogic brahmanas to chant the mantras. No proper ingredients. The method is Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. It's easier. It doesn't cost so much as all these sacrifices. Don't have to have great learning and education to chant all the mantras. Therefore it's good for Kali Yuga. So Shukadeva Goswami, knowing well that he's giving the Yuga Dharma, giving the principles for a whole Yuga, is speaking to Maharaj Parikshit in just the perfect manner. And that will be and was charted down by Vyasadeva for the sake of all of us who, knowing well that the people were less intelligent in this age of Kali, gave this Vedic knowledge just for the sake and satisfaction of all persons who are struggling to find some kind of knowledge and light in this dark age which is overcome by ignorance and bewilderment. So, our business in this Krishna consciousness movement should be to simply get to the point of that transcendental vision and knowledge and give up this nationalism and bodilyism and all kinds of isms. All of this nonsense idea that I am this body, I am this mind, I am this country, I am this culture, I am this language. None of these things are true. I'm none of these things. I'm Krishna's eternal servant, and that's all. That is our identity. Krishna's eternal Driver Swarup Hoy Krishna Nichadas. I am Krishna's eternal servant. That's all. And that is real identity. And any other kind of identification is false and will bring the wrong conclusion and will simply cause trouble. And when you recognize yourself as Krishna's servant, Krishna Gochara, or Kinchana Gochara, those who have only Krishna's lotus feet and nothing else, the family of Krishna, Krishna Das. That is what we are. We all have the same name, Das. Sometimes they say like that. Everybody there has the same last name, Das. Yes, we're all Das. Das and Dasi. Family. Big family. Of servants. Actually, they're also part of that family. They just don't know it yet. They're family members who've forgotten. So, this is Krishna's family, so let us make a nice home within which this family can live. Hare Krishna.